In this video, we will talk about how to write the discussion and interpretation section of your dissertation, thesis, or research report, like a research article. This video is based on chapter 9 of How to Write a Better Thesis, written by Evans, Gruber, and Zobel, published in 2014 by Springer. We will talk about how to structure your discussion, how to make sure that you have the right thesis structure in writing your discussion, and we will touch upon how to write with authority. So, when you structure your discussion, when you start planning your writing in the discussion section, remember that the task of the discussion chapter is to, enable you to reach your conclusions. Basically, to respond to the goal or the aim that you stated in the intro or in the earlier chapters. Okay, so really, how can you do that? What's the best way to do it? One way is to draw up a tentative list of conclusions, and then that should help you identify an appropriate structure. Basically, you begin by brainstorming, and you write down the stuff that you know, the things that you didn't know when you started the research, and perhaps one sentence for each new thing that you learned from your research. Could be big ideas, little ideas, bits of knowledge, some insights, some of your thoughts when that you took note of while doing your research, answers to questions, other things, right? At this brainstorming part, don't worry about anything really, or about things like, are you responding to the aim that you identified in the introductory chapter? Just brainstorm. Right, so then what you do is rearrange this list, and that should give you the titles of the main sections of your discussion. Basically, if you sort this ideas, sentences that you wrote down during the brainstorming part, if you sort them into associated ideas, right, you will end up with several groups, usually maybe 3 or 4, should be sufficient to move on. If you have more than 4 groups, maybe you just need to kind of, maybe you are not like, you are just including too much, or maybe you could join one or more ideas into like a bigger idea, into one kind of part, right? Or maybe those were things that were important at some point when you were doing your research, but maybe you don't want to include them into the discussion section, right? So just basically rearrange, merge some ideas, maybe discard some of the things, and just 4 groups of conclusions are quite sufficient, right? Then next thing you want to do, right, you want to, before you start writing, right, in this 3 or 4 sections that you came up with, check your thesis structure, right? String together introductions and conclusions for all the chapters, right? So basically make sure that everything is aligned, and what you are talking about in the discussion or interpretation section is kind of connected to the intros and conclusions of preceding chapters. Okay. Then check that the tentatively structured thesis responds to the aim and scope you set yourself in the intro chapter, right? So think about whether you really answered the main question, whether you responded to the aim that you have started the research with, okay? Once you have drafted the outline of your interpretation and discussion section, remember to write with authority. At this point, you earned your right to comment on this issue that you're studying, and you possess the authority and also the expertise sufficient enough to comment, to write with authority. Okay, so make sure that your exposition of new theory or ideas places your thesis within the context of the field you are working in, right? So don't just tell about your results. This is my result one, this is my result two, but really show how you view your results against the existing knowledge, existing thinking, right? This kind of connects you back to your background or lit review chapters. So be confident and discuss with authority, right? Uh, that also means that you want to acknowledge any limitations of your findings. Okay, for example, if you have some theoretical results, you might acknowledge that they actually need more validation and a lot of validation studies before you can argue that they are really suitable in practice, right? If it's an empirical research, then you could really discuss all the limitations that there are out there and things that you did to address those limitations, and maybe things that future studies should do or could do to address those limitations, right? So another comment talking about, related to the advice, write with authority, is that authority also comes with responsibility, right? So very often with a lot of empirical studies, one thing you should really consider is external generalizability of your findings, right? Especially with things like case studies. Often the results of your study might not be generalizable to other contexts, right? Or things that you found are not transferable to other contexts or to other, even data sets, right? So discuss that. This is a very important part to touch upon in the discussion section. Generally, my advice also would be, this is beyond what this how to write a better thesis chapter talks about. I would really select even as early as possible when you delve into the topic, when you do your literature review, uh, you know, select a couple of role models, people whose writing you like. And they could be writing about your topic, that would be perfect. But it's okay to select people who work on other topics or even in other disciplines, right? And read their work for inspiration and try to understand their intuition and their logic in writing their articles, usually books, right? More so articles, and try to see what things they address in their discussion and interpretation sections, in their conclusion sections, so that you could have some ideas about important things that should be addressed in typical discussion sections in your field. And that usually helped me. And I think exposure to how the best minds in our field write is crucial in coming up with your own articles, dissertations,